Hi everyone, this is AJ speaking. It's now 14 hours after Nvidia reported second quarter results. We are still in pre-market trading and Nvidia is currently down roughly 2%. I will make part of this video widely available without time delay, but in order to be fair to my subscribers, the high value observations of this analysis I will have to retain for my subscribers. So if you listen to this and haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you go to X, go to my handle, which you see down here, Alojo, and subscribe to my account. With that out of the way, let's dive right in. So in front of you, you see total revenue as reported in dark blue, and in this light blue color, you will see management's guidance. So this is not my estimate. This is what management told us they expect to deliver. In the second quarter, revenue was up 56% year over year and 6% quarter over quarter. And management guidance implies a re-acceleration in growth to a year over year growth rate of, a sequential growth rate of 16%. And that would imply a still super strong year-over-year growth rate of 54%. However, management heavily caveated that number, or I should better say sandbagged. Management explicitly said this reflects estimation of zero H20 revenue, but they were quick to point out should licensing issues be resolved of China buyers who already have received licenses, there could be another 2 to 5 billion of just China H20 sales. It is not reflected in these numbers yet. They also pointed out that there might be other H20 buyers, but it was clear that the 54 billion does not include any H20 sales. For this reason, you will see later in this presentation two scenarios. One scenario which will just reflect the 54 billion of current guidance. And then there will be another scenario which will reflect a probability weighting of the midpoint of the H20 guidance. And specifically that means 3.5 billion, i.e. the midpoint of 2 to 5 billion guided, times a 50% expected value. And then that number is adjusted for the 15% tax that the current US administration imposes on Nvidia's China sales. But I will discuss this in more detail later. Next, we need to understand how reliable Nvidia's guidance is. For that, we need to look at this analysis. In this Nvidia green color, you can see what Nvidia actually reported. And in this dark blue color or teal color, you can see what they guided for. And you can see that consistently Nvidia beat its own guidance, and you might call this sandbagging. And up here you can see by how much Nvidia exceeded its guidance. And you can see that in the most recent quarter they exceeded guidance by 3.9%, or in absolute numbers by 1.7 billion in revenue. I'd like to point out another important aspect regarding Q1. Q1 in Nvidia's financial year ends in April. That quarter saw the important H20 ban impact that caused a significant write-off and significant loss in revenue. Despite the loss in H20 revenue in that quarter, which Nvidia told us was 2.5 billion, Nvidia still exceeded revenue guidance by 2.5% or 1.1 billion. This means Nvidia would have exceeded guidance by 8% without the H20 ban. I think this is a key observation. It means management cannot be trusted, and I mean this in a positive way. They always sandbag. And that's why even in difficult quarters, they always meet and exceed their revenue guidance. So this is something we have to keep in mind. So now let's look at what this light blue color means. This is the implied revenue based on a prior understating of 56 billion. And it is much more likely that we see a number ballpark in that region than what Nvidia actually guided for, based on their long track record of significant guidance beats. And you also have to consider that Nvidia sells to large buyers. They're not selling chewing gum, so these purchases are planned many quarters in advance. And that means Nvidia's guidance is not a near-term demand derived projection. This is basically an excerpt from their order book. So these are locked. This is basically locked in revenue at this point. In other words, Nvidia's guidance is not a forecast. It's basically a sandbag number out of their locked in revenue for the next couple of months. Here on this next slide, you see the implied revenue that also reflects some estimation around the H20. And in the comments on the slides, I left the details how this is calculated. But the bottom line is there is even more upside should Nvidia be able to resolve some of these licensing issues. And on the call, there were some commentary that there is a good chance they might be able to. But because Nvidia doesn't have to include these upsides and still show phenomenal growth, they, I believe, played it safe and just put out the 54 billion guidance. So the resulting revenue, if there was some amount of H20 sales, is what you see here. And you can see this would be a kind of shocking trend, because it would imply that revenue was up 23% sequentially in next quarter and up 64% year over year, which would mean a re-acceleration in revenue growth. I don't believe that looking at the share price, the market has quite understood what's going on yet. And this is only revenue. There's a lot more when we look down further in the P&L, which you see here on the right-hand side. Next, we need to look at the revenue composition. Nvidia at this point is obviously mostly driven by the data center business. The only other somewhat needle-moving segment is the gaming segment, but it pales in comparison. So that means we should be diving deeper into data center. And this is what this slide shows you. This slide breaks down just the data center segment into its two components, which is the compute segment and the networking segment. And here is what you see people claim is the reason why the stock sold off. The compute part of the data center segment reduced sequentially, and you can see this down here. It reduced by roughly 300 million quarter over quarter to 33.8 billion. What they ignore is two things. One, this is entirely driven by one-off effects from the H20. And second, there was enormous growth in the networking aspect of Nvidia. And this is where we'll stop this public part of this long-form deep dive Nvidia video, since we now move to the very high value aspects of this research. And as I said in the beginning, I have to retain this for my subscribers to be fair. Therefore, if you found this insightful, I highly recommend you subscribe to my research. Thank you very much for listening. See you in the next one. Bye.